Hello everyone. So again, welcome back. We've been looking at the sixth mass extinction and how I guess humans are affecting their ability to live further on life, right? And let's move on and look at some of the other aspects out here. So here one aspect that obviously, or one idea that crops up I guess is one thought rather, how do I reduce my carbon footprint, as in what can I do? Let's say without involving the government, the local community or such, or acting on a global scale, what can I do, right? So let's look at one aspect. We discussed aviation, right, and how that was one of the major aspects. So if you are traveling or a globe traveler or such, you can cut down on your travels, right? And there is obviously, we looked at energy as being a requirement for energy as being one of the major contributors to greenhouse gases, right? You can look at your air conditioning, right? The extent of air conditioning, maybe you can now put your air conditioning only at 29 rather than 18 degrees centigrade, as most Indians do. You can decrease, or you can try to increase your energy production from solar panels, let's say, or solar power, pardon me, right? And what else? You can start getting more exercise, use more bicycles, and consume less petrol and diesel, the hydrocarbons, right? You can decrease them. Yes, these are some of the aspects. Some of the less obvious aspects, we are going to look at it. Some of these aspects we will cover later in the class, but what are some of the less obvious aspects? So at a personal level, avoiding meat and dairy is the single best way to reduce your impact on earth, right? As we discussed, what is it now, 80% of the land, or I think 60% of the land is used for, what do we say, cattle farms, poultry, and so on and so forth, and the farms to deliver food to those particular cattle and poultry. So what is one way to reduce your impact on earth? It is by avoiding meat and dairy. And what does this analysis reveal? That it reveals the huge footprint of livestock. So livestock provides just 18% of calories, but takes up 83% of the farmland, right? Okay, 83% of all farmland, right? So that's remarkably important. So what do we need now? We need nutrients, let's say. We need calories. I think typically 2200 calories per male, I think 1800 per female, adults again, I guess, right? Calories. And obviously you need what do we say, protein, maybe 50 grams, or if you are remarkably active and depending on your weight, 100 grams per day, right? 50 grams to 100 grams. Typically Indians get very little protein and more calories, and you know what that leads to. So we will not go back there. But as you see here, more than 80% of farmland is used for livestock, but it produces just 18% of food calories and 37% of protein. So land use, again, contribution of farmed animal products, land use is 83%, but it only produces 37% of the protein and 18% I guess of the calories, right. So that is something to keep in mind. You can look at the, what do we say, exaggerated footprint that livestock, or our need for consuming meat and dairy has. So what one thing that you can do, you can go vegan. If not vegan, you can certainly go vegetarian or cut down on your particular meat intake, I guess. And another aspect is keep in mind that if not the Europeans, most of the North Americans and some, or a significant fraction of the Europeans too, consume almost 3 to 4 times as much protein as they need per day. So that obviously leads to different kinds of lifestyle diseases. In India, we have a different issue. We consume too many of or too much of processed sugar, less protein, less exercise, and we have our own set of lifestyle diseases. But let us say in the relatively more developed countries, we have a different set of what we say, different lifestyle and different sets of diseases. And one aspect that I guess we can see is that you can go vegan or vegetarian now, right. So as I mentioned, you typically need 100 grams of protein, but here we are talking about 100 grams of meat. Please note that 1 gram of meat does not equate to, or is not equivalent to 1 gram of protein. But here, for comparison's sake, we are looking at, while beef results in production of up to 105 kgs of greenhouse gases to produce 100 grams of meat, tofu, a vegetarian product from what is it now? Is it from soy? I am not sure. Tofu produces less than 3.5 kgs, let us say. And what do we see here? for 100 grams of meat, what do we say, protein or meat, let us say, or I guess this data is for 100 grams of protein, if I am not wrong. And you see the what is it now, extent of greenhouse gases given out when you are depend upon beef, let us say, and then lamb and mutton, beef, but this is for dairy, consumption of dairy, again 10th to 90th percentile. Obviously, the range of greenhouse gas emissions varies depending on the conditions, but again you can still see that with respect to beef it is remarkably high. With respect to dairy also, yes, it is high, but not as high as when you are trying to consume beef. And with respect to poultry also, something that is what do we say, remarkably practiced in India, or people are dependent upon poultry meat and also fish. You see that the what do we say, greenhouse gas emissions are not inconsiderable, if I may say so. And then come eggs. I guess if you do need protein from animal sources, yes, eggs, and then tofu, vegetarian source, and then you have the other sources of for vegetarian or vegan sources of protein. So, one way to get protein is, while decreasing your carbon footprint, is to go vegan, right, and also look at nuts and pulses, right. So, that is something to keep in mind, and remarkably relatively healthy too, less inflammatory issues with respect to consumption of vegan sources of protein. So, again that is one thing that you can change if you want to. That was on a lighter note. And what do we have here? We have Earth's resources being consumed at an ever greater and destructive what do we say, volumes, if I may say so. And the study says that the date by which we consume an year's worth of resources is arriving faster. The whole point is sustainability, right, sustainability. And what do we have here? In 1970, humans consumed the total resources that could be produced by the earth by 29th December. And in 1988, I guess we consumed the resources faster, and by 1988 we consumed them faster. Again, what are we talking about? We are talking about the point at which consumption exceeds the capacity of nature to regenerate, let us say, or unsustainable consumption. And now in 2018, we already reached this what do we say, unsustainable level of consumption by August itself. We started at 29th December, and by now we are already at August, and thus within a period of 50 years, I guess, right. So, that is something to understand, or keep in mind, as in we are now consuming at an unsustainable rate, and we still have large sections of society which are remarkably poor. So, it is time that people wake up and rethink what their priorities are. In this context, I have some other data or graphic later, we will come back to that. And here again another aspect, as we discussed earlier, was air pollution. It is the new tobacco. Air pollution is a huge aspect, certainly in India. And what do we see here? The simple act of breathing is killing 7 million people a year, and most of them from what is it now, South and Southeast Asia, I guess, right, harming billions more. But a smog of complacency pervades the planet, right. Again, the decision makers, I guess they are relatively more immune to the adverse effects of pollution due to lifestyle, I guess, or the way that they live their lives, but not really. Everybody is affected by air pollution now. But people do not care about it. We will look at why later. Again, keep in mind that air pollution is the new tobacco. And we did look at this graphic earlier, but one thing to keep in mind is that the developing countries, certainly India, right, and China, the eastern coast at least, right, we have remarkable levels of pollution, while most of the European countries and what do we say, North America, US are remarkably well off. And here we have the safe level 10 microgram per meter cube, if I am not wrong, and that is the safe level with respect to particulate matter of 2.5 microns or lesser size. And as we see, we are at as a whole, India, I guess, ranks not ranks poorly, does or fares very poorly now. And what what are the trends here? When we say modern pollution, we are talking about outdoor air and chemicals. Traditionally, when people used to use what do we say, wood or such to cook in kitchens, used to have indoor air pollution, and due to what do we say, water. So, the number of deaths due to these traditional kinds of pollution obviously is coming down, while the number of deaths due to the modern pollution, as these people refer to, due to outdoor air pollution and chemicals in the air, or chemicals in our food chain, let us say food cycle, is going up. That is something to keep in mind, right. And again, what do we see? Deaths from pollution dwarf, the key aspect is dwarf many other major causes. So, global deaths by cause in 2015 by air pollution, right, 8.5 million, right, tobacco smoking, distant second or second, AIDS, malaria, tuberculosis, a poor third, child and mother nutrition, again keep in mind this is global deaths, right, and road accidents, and more importantly war and murder. It is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th, I guess. We are talking about global causes and deaths. And as you know, India, let us say, I guess people say we are a proud nation and so on and so forth. I won't go into that. But what do we take pride in, or what are our objectives, have to be relooked at. It's, remarkably, what do we say, the tipping point has been passed, and it's high time that we look at it. As in, we do talk about, what do we say, death due to war, murder and so on and so forth, terrorism. But more people are being lost. Again, we are talking about crores now, right. They are being lost due to the adverse effects of air pollution. But our priorities are different, obviously. But again, I guess it's time to look at it or relook at it. This being a public forum, there is, I am constrained a bit in what I can put out there, because obviously I am using public resources out here. But it's again, somebody has to bell the cat, and you can see the data. The more you dig into it, you see that our priorities are skewed, and you really need to invest in education, awareness, or technological innovation, education, health, right, and what do we say, improvements with respect to air pollution. And if you look at the budget allotted to the Central Pollution Control Board, I think it's 80 crores or 100 crores. And you can compare that with the budget allotted for other sectors now, right. You want to live, right, but if you do not have a house or a planet worth living in, where will you construct your house, right. So, that is the key aspect out here. So, here again is the data, or at least the general data, which will let you know, or which should drive your objectives, let us say. Let me move on. So, air pollution may be damaging every organ of the body. A comprehensive analysis finds harm from head to toe, and I will rather than just mentioning this, I will switch over to that article. Here it is. So, you can spend some time on it. And one aspect I left this up is support the Guardian, I guess. Guardian, as I mentioned, is a newspaper which is not beholden to any, what do we say, multinational corporation, not to any wealthy family, and certainly and thus not depend upon any vested interests. So, thus far it has done a remarkable job in with respect to journalism, right, investigative journalism, or being at the forefront of such issues when trying to highlight them to bring about greater awareness, let us see. Obviously, in India we have the Hindu, and so those who can support the Guardian, I suggest that they do, right. Somebody has to bell the cat, somebody has to speak the truth, right. Again, so let us just look at the effects of air pollution. As we see here, air pollution may be damaging every organ of the body. The key aspect is maybe, and that is where the doubt lies. But when you want to conduct a study, who would, or people don't want to, what do we say, be placed in a scenario where they face remarkable levels of pollution, and where the scientists can look at or investigate the adverse effects on the human body. People don't do that, and typically what do we say, even your ethical rules when they are followed do not allow that too. So, that is one of the reason why you can never say with certainty, let us say when you talk about the adverse effects of air pollution, but you have enough epidemiological studies, let us say, right. And what does this analysis indicate now? Finds harm from head to toe, including dementia, heart and lung diseases, fertility problems, and reduced intelligence. This is again global review. This is not a review by the Guardian. It is a scientific article which has been, or set of scientific review articles that have been, what do we say, put forth in the public domain now. So, according to the World Health Organization, air pollution is a public emergency, right. The systemic change is the result of pollutants causing inflammation that then floods through the body, and ultrafine particles are being carried around by the bloodstream. We talked about how particulate matter 2.5, I guess PM 2.5 which refers to that particular matter or those particulate matter less than 2.5 micro what do we say meters in size, I guess, right, and that can enter our bloodstream, right. That is something that we talked about, and there are different ailments, but the impact of different pollutants on many ailments remains to be established, suggesting that well known heart and lung damage is only the tip of the iceberg. Typically, I don't like, pardon me, reading things out loud from the slide, but to emphasize, I am reading these aspects out. Air pollution can harm acutely as well as chronically, acute and chronic, short term and long term what do we say effects, potentially affecting every organ of the body, right. Ultrafine particles pass through the lungs and are readily picked up by the cells, pardon me, and carried via bloodstream to expose virtually all cells in the body. And if something is missing from the review, it is probably because there was no research done yet. Okay, so that is one other aspect. And what do we see here? How air pollution reaches every part of the body, right? Silent killer, right? Lungs and heart, harmful effects of dirty air are shown in the review begin when the pollution is inhaled, right. You have chronic laryngitis, asthma, lung cancer and heart diseases, right. Again PM10 and PM2.5 both. This results in breathing problems from asthma to lung cancer. There is now overwhelming evidence that air pollution results in serious harm not only to the lungs but also the heart. Here it increases the risk of heart attacks as arteries narrow, they narrow now, and muscles weaken. That is something to keep in mind. One reason for the wide ranging damage from air pollution is that very small particles, which I refer to as PM 2.5, cannot penetrate the lungs and be carried around the body. They land in the organs directly, right. And animal studies have shown that they can even travel right up the olfactory nerve to the brain. An emerging area of research also suggests air pollution can now affect how genes function, right. The brain and mind, strokes, dementia and reduced intelligence are all conditions affecting the brain that have been linked to air pollution. Stroke, dementia, reduced intelligence, this is primarily the case with respect to infants and children being exposed to unhealthy levels of what we say pollution during the period of their growth, let us say. Reduced intelligence, eye problems and skin aging. There is also evidence that poor sleep, pardon me, can be a consequence of breathing toxic air. The main reason for the far reaching damage from air pollution is systemic inflammation. Keep this or please pay attention to this. The immune cells within our human body think that a pollution particle is a bacteria. They go after it and they try to kill it by releasing enzymes and acids. These inflammatory proteins spread into the body, affecting the brain, the kidneys, the pancreas and so forth. In evolutionary terms, the body has evolved to defend itself against infections but not pollution, right. Keep this in mind. The inflammatory protein that our what do we say immune cells release, let us say, they spread into the body affecting the brain, the kidneys and the pancreas and so on and so forth. Abdominal organs, among many other organs affected is the liver. They say that the researchers were surprised by this until he thought about the liver's role in removing toxins from the body, right. So again, kidney cancer, bladder cancer, diabetes, Crohn's disease, fatty liver disease. The research highlighted in the review also links air pollution to numerous cancers, including in the bladder and the gut, where an increase in irritable bowel syndrome has also been found, right. Another more important aspect is the effect of air pollution on reproduction, babies and children. The most disturbing impact of toxic air is the damage to reproduction and children. Fertility is reduced. A lot of this is seen in India, considerable issues with fertility, and miscarriages are increased by exposure to air pollution. Reduced fertility, miscarriages, low birth weight. For example, I saw the data with respect to Beijing when they had their Olympics. In the years preceding the particular event, they brought down air pollution by different ways, let us say, hook or crook now. And there was a remarkable spike in the birth weight, not remarkable or considerable increase in the birth weight of the babies born during that period. Again, different aspects. The unborn are also affected, with a recent study finding pollutants in the placentas that nourish fetuses. Air pollution is strongly linked to low birth weight for bodies. Children are especially vulnerable as their bodies are still developing. Exposure to dirty air leads to stunted lungs, increase in childhood obesity, leukemia and mental health problem. And another aspect is, the reviewers say that the doctors need to speak up. More often than not, doctors themselves don't have the data, nor do they know the effects of what do we say, air pollution, or direct effects of air pollution. Everyone knows it's bad, but to have a causal or to prove a causal effect, that's difficult in this context, but there is enough epidemiological data and what do we say, data from experiments on animals that air pollution is the biggest threat, or one of the biggest threats I guess, along with global warming, insect what do we say, decline in insect numbers and some of the other aspects that we have looked at earlier, right. Let me come back to where we were. So, this is something. So, again, wherever you are and whatever you become, keep this in mind and try to decrease the effect due to pollution now, right, or your what do we say, inputs with respect to pollution. So, as we mentioned earlier, we talked about miscarriage and so on and so forth, and scientists call the study's findings upsetting and that toxic air must be cut, but was it cut? Not really. We will look at this. The average 7-day NO2, right, level across the study was 34 micrograms per cubic meter, right, and researchers found an increase in 20 microgram per cubic meter was associated with a 16% rise in the risk of miscarriage. Again, greater details can be found at this particular link, which I am not going to go into now, but again, risk of miscarriage with a relatively little increase in what do we say, NOx now, right, or in this case NO2. Again, typically released from diesel vehicles. Let us look at that. So, here we have, again, because I have the data or better data from UK, I am presenting that UK national average NOx meaning both NO and NO2. Roadside concentration, the key aspect is roadside concentration apportioned by the source of NOx emissions, right. What are the sources for these NOx emissions? Road transport background, non-road transport, domestic and so on and so forth, regional background, but most of that is due to roadside increment. As you can see, the biggest pie is due to roadside increment. And what are the major sources of NOx now? Cars, diesel and HG, I guess, heavy, articulated heavy goods vehicles, buses and so on and so forth. And petrol vehicles, relatively less. Not sure if that is because there are less number of petrol vehicles, but typically I believe petrol vehicles are relatively more cleaner, if I may say so, right. And what do you see? You see that the diesel vehicles lead to a remarkable increase in or have a remarkable effect on NOx emissions now, and in India this is remarkably true. And another aspect is in India we have NOx and due to various reasons also VOCs, volatile organic compounds at the ground level, and in the presence of sunlight we have formation of high concentrations of ozone, and this is a killer, right. We discussed this in detail. Though I got this data from the UK, the trends are similar here, and the concentrations of NOx or VOCs and thus ozone too will be relatively high in India. That is something for you to keep in mind. Let us say if you are trying to buy a house or think about buying a car and so on and so forth, think about what you can do. And typically, who will get things done, the government of the day or the government that has been in power, let us say. But the way things are working now is that, populist leaders are coming into power, either with respect to or in UK, what is it now, US or in Brazil now. Again, somebody has to bell the cat. I request you to please think about what I am trying to say, rather than trying to take it in a different spirit now, right. And again, people are thinking about short term needs or trying to keep people happy until the next set of elections so that they can gain or keep themselves in power. For example, in UK again, the government analysis shows that, and again if it is true in the UK, it would be certainly true in India too, right. Clean air zones are the most effective option in reduction of nitrogen oxides, NOx now, right. What do we have here? We have total reduction in NOx emissions over 10 years if they implement different kinds of practices. One is clean air zones, as in typically you have, let us say, Delhi now, you have the whole of Delhi being choked due to vehicular traffic now, and you are going to have remarkable high levels of NOx, NO and NO2. So, one aspect could be, let us say, taxing vehicles coming into Delhi, especially if they do not have Bharat, what is it now, 6 or so emission standards, let us say. So, those with Bharat 4, 3 or I mean I do not think 3 are still functional, but those vehicles are going to be taxed, let us say. So, these are called creating clean air zones, let us say. If that was implemented, they predict that at least in UK and I guess it is going to have or bring about remarkable decrease in NOx. Or you can retrofit buses and these high volume vehicles and cabs, or you can introduce low emission vehicles, vehicle labeling or scrapping some of these vehicles, I guess, driving style and so on and so forth. But what did the what is it now government choose? At least what was this year? This was in 2017, I guess, right? They chose, I believe, to see to it that from 2040, only vehicles, only those vehicles with meeting the particular standards are going to be allowed, to run on the road. But the issue is like, bolting the garage door after the polluting vehicle has gone out, right? What is the point then? Because the people are suffering from the effects now. Introducing, what do we say, or coming up with regulation that will, what do we say, come into play from 2040 does not really change the situation now. Again, other than that, they were also trying to improve or provide funding for cycling, and I think also looked at retrofitting buses, HGVs and black cabs. Again, why do people do not want to go for this option? Because if you are a car owner and you are being taxed for taking your car into the city, right, and you need to make 4 trips a day through the city, you are going to be remarkably pissed now, right? And most governments want to keep the people happy, right, while looking at the short term needs. But if you look at the long term needs, you need a visionary now, right? And I guess that is something that is lacking. Again, it tells us about the society that we have to, right? So, again, this is something to keep in mind. Again, how the society plays a role in itself, and also I read that they were delegating this authority to the local councils because they do not want the people to be mad at the relevant government here. Again, let us move on. So, what do we have here? Air quality improved in most of the cities in Europe and Americas between this period, but worsened in South and Southeast Asia. Well, that is to be expected, but keep in mind this is just within a 6-year period. In Europe, decrease, America, decrease. Yes, let us see where we are, and we are out here, I guess, South and Southeast Asia now, right. One is for 10 micron and the other is with respect to 2.5 micron, I guess. Okay, here we have some low income and high income countries, but we are concerned with comparing between Europe and Americas and South and Southeast Asia. What do you see? We see that we are increasing out here, right, remarkable or considerable increase with respect to the particulate matter. And what do we have? We did look at this earlier. Delhi has the worst air pollution, out of the world's mega cities with more than 14 million or 1.4 crore habitants, right. Again, we have Bombay here, Delhi here and anything else, but I think I do have a statistic or a set of data here. So, more than 90% of air pollution deaths occur in South and Southeast Asia. So, again, I did have this graphic earlier, but the reason I am bringing this back is governments are more or less governed by what the society is up to or the direction in which society is moving. It is high time that we wake up and look at what our priorities are, look at what's killing us, right, and not being swayed by emotions now, right. We need to tackle what's killing us rather than, again, as I repeat myself, being swayed by emotions now. So, I guess I am out of time. Okay, let me see what I have here. I will quickly end this up. What are some of the 20 worst cities overall? We have Gwalior, this is with respect to particulate matter 2.5 annual mean, right, again the relevant article. We have Gwalior, Allahabad, Patna, Raipur, Delhi, Kanpur, I am not sure where Khanna is, Firozabad, Lucknow and so on, right. And again you can see the other countries too, mostly what do we say, Iran, China and some Pakistan, but you can see how polluted Indian cities are, right. This is with respect to particular matter of 2.5 size, and as we have looked at briefly anyway, we look at some of the adverse effects again, but briefly you see that air pollution affects every aspect of your life or all the organs, pardon me, right. So, that is something to keep in mind, but where are the European countries? Here we have 10 worst in the United States and Canada. Here we are talking about 0 to 50, the maximum is 18, And think of where we are talking about 200 here, and in Gwalior it is 176. These are the 20 worst cities overall, and these are the worst in the United States and Canada. We are talking about 18. So, I guess that is the reason why people look at quality of life too and try to immigrate, but if we set right our priorities, I guess we can also look at that. But again, it is not as if we can give up our entire defense budget and turn it towards education and health, because there are going to be other geopolitical factors at play. But again, please do not be swayed by emotion, and look at the data and see what needs to be done. I guess on that note, I will end today's session, and thank you.